Hello everyone and welcome back to Make the Music, and today I'm continuing my series on Mixing 101. I just did a video called Mixing 101 EQ where I go over everything regarding EQ, how to get started using it. You can find that on my channel. And today I'm going to be doing a video on Mixing 101 compression. So basics of compression. If you have no idea what compression is, I'm going to dive right into it in this video, break it down, use compression on a couple different elements to get you to understand the concepts so then you can use it in your own mixes and understand how to get it to work for you, because every track is different. I also have a free guide called the Home Studio Toolbox. If you go to the description box, you can find that 100% free. It's everything you need to get started recording music on your laptop, a bunch of free material there, as well as you'll get access to a bunch of my samples and multi-tracks to practice with. Anyways, let's get into the video here. So what is compression? Let's break it down. Let's go over all of this here. So the first thing I want to do is find a sound where you can easily hear what the effect of compression is. So I'm going to go to this lead vocal track here. And I've got all the plugins turned off because I want you to hear what compression is doing. So I'm going to add this compression plugin. In Reaper, it's called Recomp. It's a stock compressor that comes with the DAW, and it's also a free DAW, I should add. So this is my compressor. What are we trying to do with compression? I think that is the question here. Well, when you have audio, and we can see here, if we increase the size of the waveform real quick, when you have audio, you can see on this graph or line that there's up, there's downs, right? And it's not always the same volume. It's a lot of the times different volumes are very dynamic. If something has a waveform that is crushed together, for example, if you look at something like, let's take a look, some guitars here or some synths, right? Look at this waveform, very crushed together, not a lot of variance. It's not very dynamic. And if something has a lot of variance in the waveform, like a vocal, it's going to have a lot of dynamics, and it's not very compressed to begin with. So with compression, what we're trying to do is bring down these loud peaks that we see here. See how some of these peaks are taller than others? Bring down those peaks so we can turn the overall volume of the entire track up. And it gets that track or whatever to fit better in the mix, and so you can hear it more consistently. You know how you turn a song on the radio or your streaming service, it feels like that vocal is always there. You can hear every single word. That's because they're using lots and lots of what's called compression. They're bringing the peaks or the loud parts of the vocal way down so that the quiet parts can come up and everything can sound the same. Everything can be at a consistent level and makes your mixes sound more impactful, a lot more clear and present. And when using that with EQ, which we went over in a previous video, you can get your tracks to sound a whole lot better. So let's go into mixing this vocal here. What I'm going to do real quick is turn the vocal up. I'm going to turn it back down eventually. But because the level is going to be so low, I just want you to be able to hear it while recording this video. So here's a vocal here.
You'll never know what you'll find hidden underneath the throne. There's only torture.
Okay, so notice there's a quiet low part, and then I went into a higher part into the verse. You can hear that again here.
There's only torture in this wretched place.
You can even hear that in this was quieter than this wretched place, right? Or wretched place. You can see that in the waveform. So here's our goal. We want to bring down these louder parts, these higher peaks, down in volume so we can bring the whole thing up and make it sound more consistent. We're going to use compression to do that. So here's our stock compressor. And so how are we going to achieve that goal? Well, we have a couple tools here when it comes to compression. We have something called the threshold. And what the threshold does, it determines at what dB the compressor is going to start to act on the track. And so generally, every track has, or every volume amount is going to be in decibels, and generally it's going to be below 0 dB. So for example, the track would have to be clipping or going above 0 dB in order for the compressor to work at this range. So we're going to need to lower the threshold to a point on the track to get the compressor to actually act on it. Now, with these settings though, it's not actually going to compress the track. It's just going to touch it. But what we need to do to actually get compression is modify these parameters here. So this is attack, this is release, this is rate, and this is ratio. These are the three you need to pay attention to when using your compressor. The attack is just how quickly the compressor is going to attack the signal and compress it. Using different attack and release times will give you different effects with compression. With a vocal, you want the attack sort of at a medium to late amount. And you can mess with this in your DAW, but I'm going to put the attack about 65 milliseconds, but you really want to use your ear to find the best sound. And release is the opposite attack. How quickly is that track going to, or how quickly is the compressor going to let the track go and go back to its original signal? That's what release does. And so what I'm going to do is set about a medium attack here and a fairly quick release, because I don't want the compressor to over compress and squeeze the life out of the vocal. I want it to release quickly, but then attack it also fairly quickly right after that. And then next we have the ratio control. And ratio control is going to determine how much compression is going to be done with relation to the original signal. But just know this, with a higher ratio, you're going to get more compression, more audible compression. I mean, it can go all the way up to infinity, which is basically limiting. I'll go over limiting in a different video. All the way down to soft amounts of compression to 1 to 2. And so dialing that in is also going to help you determine what you need to get the sound where it is. 4 to 1 is a very common ratio for vocals, but 8 to 1 is also commonly used as well. We're going to mess around with it. So let's mess around with these controls knowing that. I'm going to go from this quiet section to this loud section to help us determine how much compression we need to use.
Fine, hidden underneath the throne. There's only torture.
And so what is this meter doing? That is the gain reduction meter. That shows us how much gain from that peak that I mentioned is getting reduced, right? So you saw it go to -10, meaning we're reducing the amount of gain on that loud part, wherever the compressor is acting, by 10 dB. And so in that case, we can bring the entire track up in order to get the static volume back to that place. But that shows how much gain reduction we're doing.
Fine.
So notice how it's not reducing any of the volume on the lower part, but working hard on the louder part.
Fine, hidden underneath the throne. There's only torture in this wretched place.
So notice how that is leveling out the volume. Let me take the compressor off.
Fine, hidden underneath the throne. There's only
Notice how that just shoots up in volume, right? We put the compressor back on.
Fine, hidden underneath the throne. There's only torture.
See how it brought that volume down? So that's exactly what our compressor is doing. The higher the ratio, the more aggressive it's going to be. Let's try 40 to 1. Let's get crazy with this.
Fine, hidden underneath the throne. There's only torture.
So you can hear a lot more pumping in the vocal, and what pumping it means is that you can just hear that compression audibly squash the audio, right? You can go all the way up to infinity. But there's an example of how compression is used. It's very clear on a vocal track. And so when I was mixing this song, let me bring the volume back to where it was. It's often common to use multiple stages of compression. So for example, in the Slate Virtual Mix Rack, I have a compressor here. That was more of a stock compressor. This is more of an analog 1176 style compressor. And so you can see the kind of gain reduction it's doing on the vocal for my mix. Let's listen here.
Fine, hidden underneath the throne. There's only torture in this wretched place.
So you can see it doing up to 10 dB of gain reduction there on the vocal at certain points. Now, in an analog style compressor like this, you also get to modify the input and output of the signal, but it has the same attack, release, and ratio settings that we saw on that stock compressor. So don't be scared. If you see a compressor with a little different settings, they basically all act the same. You just need to learn the nuance of the controls. So let me play the vocal one more time.
You'll never know what you'll find hidden underneath the throne. There's only torture.
So once again, notice that on the quiet parts, it was barely doing any gain reduction. But once we got loud, it does 10 dB of gain reduction. So hopefully you understand the concept behind compression at that point. And we can use it in a lot of places on our track. Compression is used a ton to get audio to sound better. Let's go to the master bus. I have what is called a mix bus compressor, or compression on the master bus, right? And I have videos on how to process your master bus here. But you can see this is a different looking compressor, but same idea. Threshold, ratio, attack, release. These things never change on compressors. They're on basically all compressors. So as long as you understand, threshold is the volume at which you're going to start the compression. The ratio is how drastic that compression is going to be. The attack is how quick the compressor attacks, and the release is how quickly it will release the audio. For a master bus, for my entire mix, I want a very, very fast release. I don't want my track sounding too pumpy. I also want a very slow attack, a pretty moderate ratio. It's at 3:1, and set the threshold to get about 1 to 4 dB gain reduction. There's no rules of thumb, but when it comes to a master bus, you want maybe 1, 2, 3 dB gain reduction. That's it. If you overcompress your master track, it's going to sound weird, believe me. For vocals, you can get up to 10, 15, 20 dB gain reduction. It really just depends on the instrument. So let me play the entire mix here at this chorus part.
Easily, somewhere between, somewhere.
So you can see it was compressing my whole track, my entire track, by about 1 to 3 dB here. And that was just setting the threshold and dialing it in to get that amount. So like I said, you can use it on vocals, bass, guitars, doesn't matter. You really want to use your ears till you feel like the track is present enough. Some tracks don't need compression at all, and it just depends on the track. I have plenty of tutorials on processing different tracks using compression, but those are the basics of it. If you have any questions, leave it in a comment down below. Compression can be complicated, and used incorrectly can hurt your mixes, but as long as you understand the concepts of threshold, ratio, attack, and release, you're going to be just fine and be able to properly use it in your mixes. So thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe to the channel. We got a lot of more great stuff coming down the pipeline. Anyways, I'll see you guys next time.